stream on YouTube, and I think it's because I had that phone on the, what do you call it, the wireless remote control. No, I had it on I had it on the Wi-Fi connection. So since this phone doesn't have a SIM card and it doesn't have a phone line, I'm gonna go live, because as soon as I did the last video, I started the live. They were both on Wi-Fi. This one slowed down, the YouTube one, so I'm just gonna keep this one on Wi-Fi. That one is not on Wi-Fi. Let's see if that works better, because it kind of slowed down. The crazy thing is YouTube, they put restricted monetization for my last video, and I just because they saw reading, because I'm reading something, and because they banned some of my other readings, because I was reading stuff they don't want me to read, which I won't read. I read those only on Instagram and Facebook, but they actually block some of them on Facebook. So the Nichiren Daishonin writings, they'd never ever blocked any of that. And then so I sent in a thing requesting them to review it, and right away they reviewed it and let me monetize it fully. Okay, so here we go. We're going live on Instagram as well. Okay, my Instagram people, I got the YouTube and the Instagram going. I'm going to finish reading where I left off. Maybe I'll finish the whole thing. I read exactly an hour last time. I didn't expect to read it an hour, but it was an interesting read. It's one of the Goshas I haven't read in the volume 2 of Nichiren's writings. He was a priest in the 13th century. 1222 he was born till I think 1280, 80 something, 89. Okay, I have to start this phone, sorry. I gotta turn on the light because I can't see here. So let me just tell you while the light's coming on, while this phone's booking up. It's now been 5 days that I've been unemployed, and still my previous job has not told me why, and they have not got back to any of my emails. They just say, we're reviewing it and we'll get back to you, and it might take up to 7 days now. I don't even think they're going to ever tell me. I think that's how they are. They have too many people working for them. They don't care about people. All they care about is money and profit, and we're just expendable. So it doesn't matter that I've worked for them for 3 years and I had a perfect record. I had the highest ratings you can have as a driver for the last 3 years, and then all of a sudden they just kick me off for one little thing I might have done. And they lie to you about what you've done all the time. They said, oh, you didn't check someone's ID. And I said, no, I always check ID. The app requires you to check ID. How can I get by without checking ID? And just stupid shit like that. Those make up something. Okay, so the rulers of the land of the gods. I'm on page 617. I read for 1 hour, so I might finish this. I don't know how long this. Oh yeah, it's kind of short, so I'll finish it. Okay, so where I left off, I'll start. Again, at the time of the Jokyu disturbance, I can't fucking see. Jien, the chief priest of the Tendai school, the prelate of Ninaji Temple, and the high-ranking priest of Onjoji and other temples joined together in carrying out all sorts of great ceremonies and secret rites that had been brought to Japan in the 3rd year of the Jokyu era, which is 1221. That was 1 year before Nichiren was born. Cyclical sign Kanoto ni. On the 19th day of the 4th month, the 15 ceremonies were performed. The chief priest of the Tendai school conducted the 1-character gold wheel ceremony. On the 2nd day of the 5th... Oh, fuck. On the 2nd day of the 5th month, the prelate of Ninnaji Temple performed the ceremony of the Wisdom King craving filled of the wishing granting method in Shishin Den Palace, and on the 8th day of the 6th month, the prelate conducted the ceremony of the Protection Sutra. The above ceremonies were carried out by 41 of the most renowned priests. This was the second time that these 15 major ceremonies were conducted in Japan. These were all conducted in Kyoto, which was the seat of the government until the shogunate took over and created the eastern capital, which Tokyo means eastern capital. Or is it western? Western capital. Tokyo. Yeah, I think it's western capital. Eastern capital is the old capital, Kyoto. So Kyoto means eastern capital, western capital. God damn it. Which way is the map? East, west. Here's Japan. God, I gotta look at it backwards. That's the west. Yeah, the western capital would be Kyoto, and then the eastern capital would be Tokyo. That's what the Tokyo and Kyoto mean. But it was called Kamakura when they made that the seat of the shogunate. Okay. Let's see. The Aikin administrator Hojo Yoshitoki had no knowledge of these religious ceremonies, and he himself conducted no ceremonies to bring about the defeat of his opponents. So the shogun didn't give a fuck about ceremonies. The emperors and their whole ruling clan in Kyoto had all these Buddhist temples to conduct these ceremonies so that they would defeat the people that are trying to overthrow the government of Japan, the shogunate, the warring samurai clan. Anyway, but that warring clan that defeated them didn't do any ceremonies. So he's saying here. And he himself conducted no ceremonies to bring about the defeat of his opponents. Indeed, even if he had conducted such ceremonies, he could not have carried out any that would have matched the various rights of his opponents or compete with them in terms of numbers of persons involved. One side had the power of Buddhist ritual and the authority vested in the ruler, who was the sovereign of the nation, guarded and protected by the various rulers of the threefold world. So this is according to the Shinto mythology of the rulers of Japan. They are guarded by these protective deities and all the different shrines around, the Shinto shrines around Japan that are all protecting them. Okay, on the other side, a subject of the Japanese nation, this is the shogun, and his warring people, barely watched over by a few paltry spirits, whose family for reign after reign had acknowledged fealty to the sovereign. So these families that became the shogunate, they had always looked at the Kyoto leaders, the emperors, as the true leaders, and they've always acknowledged them as leaders until they decided they were going to overthrow them in this whole disturbance that ended in 1221, a year before Nichiren was born, and that became the new government of Japan because they exiled all the retired emperors and killed the emperor. Okay. For generation after generation had been retainers to the Minamoto family. If someone wielding the ruler's authority should attack one of his subjects, it would be as if a hawk were seizing a pheasant, a cat devouring a mouse, a snake swallowing a frog, a lion slaughtering a rabbit. Why need one so hastily call upon the gods of heaven and the deities of the earth, or startle the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas? When a lion, the king of the beasts, seizes a rabbit, does it require such intense effort? When a hawk devours a pheasant, must it pray for help in doing so? When one is a mighty ruler, he requires no prayer whatsoever, but may kill one of his subjects as easily as a great quantity of water puts out a little fire, or a great wind banishes a small cloud. But as though adding dry wood to a fire that is already roaring, or a heavy rain to a river already mighty, to the power vested in the ruler was added the performance of these great ceremonies, so that the life force and spirit of Minamoto no Yoritomo and Hojo Yoshitoki would be plucked out as though by the gods Brahma and Chakra themselves. So these two warring families, the Minamoto no Yoritomo and the Hojo Yoshitoki, were the ones whose families overthrew the Japanese government and became the shogunate. It was as though one were attacking a person already drunk on old wine, or as though a snake were drawing out the life of a frog. The lives and the personal and family names of Yoritomo and Yoshitoki were inscribed on paper, and prayers were offered beseeching the honored one and the gods. Oh, sorry. The Yoritomo and the Yoshitoki were part of the emperor's family, because they were the ones offering prayers to try to keep their rule and stop them from being overthrown. Okay, I forget all these names, man. Complicated. Okay, let me just read that again. The lives and the personal and family names of Yoritomo and Yoshitoki were inscribed on paper, and prayers were offered beseeching the honored ones and the gods to trample them underfoot. Oh, no. So that was right. Those two family names were the ones they were trying to trample underfoot. They were trying to stop this overthrow of the government by offering all these prayers. So, well, let me read that again. So I was right the first time. Those are the two families that overthrew the government. It was as though one were attacking a person already drunk on old wine, or as though a snake were drawing out the life of a frog. The lives and the personal and family names of Yoritomo and Yoshitoki were inscribed on paper, and prayers were offered beseeching the honored ones and the gods to trample them underfoot. So they put their names on these prayer scrolls and stuff in the different temples and different monasteries, and to say we're gonna destroy these people. Surely that should have been more than enough to ensure their destruction. Why was it then that before a year or a month had passed, indeed, in a matter of a mere day or two, the imperial forces were defeated? Those who are rulers in lands where the Buddhist doctrines prevail should consider this matter with great care, and for the sake of their fate in future existences should give thought to just what kind of prayers they offer up. Because I, Nichiren, have been so troubled by this question from the time I was a young man, I have studied both the exoteric and the esoteric teachings, and have examined all the sutras of the various schools, sometimes doing so under the guidance of others, sometimes pursuing my own investigations, until I have come to understand the reason. To examine one's face, one has only to look into a clear mirror. At this time, it was a brass polish that you can see yourself. It wasn't as clear as the mirror now, but they called that a clear mirror, where you can kind of see your reflection in a bronze or brass or whatever it was. So, what was I? To examine one's face, one has only to look in a clear mirror, and to understand the rise and fall of the nation's fortunes. There is no mirror more revealing than that provided by the Buddhist teachings. When one examines the various Mahayana sutras, such as the Benevolent King Sutra, Golden Light Sutra, Sovereign King Sutra, Protection Sutra, Nirvana Sutra, and Lotus Sutra, one sees that there are cases in which, by adhering to Buddhist teachings, a nation may prosper and its people enjoy long life, and others in which, while likewise adhering to Buddhist teachings, the nation is brought to ruin and its people's lives are cut short. It is comparable to the case of water, which is capable of floating a boat, but is also capable of capsizing it. Or it is like the 5 kinds of grain, which at times nourishes human life, but at other times may injure it. So he says the sutras are like a water that can carry a boat, or they can capsize the boat, because they tell you exactly what sutras to practice in the latter-day law. And if you don't practice those sutras, all these calamities are going to happen. And that's why he wrote all the letters, because he said that's exactly why all these things are happening, because we're not practicing the right sutra. And the only correct sutra for this time is the Lotus Sutra, as it says in the sutras. In the Nirvana Sutra, in the Lotus Sutra, and in the Pre-Lotus Sutra, it all says, I have not yet revealed the truth until the Lotus Sutra. And the Nirvana Sutra says, only in the Lotus Sutra I have fully revealed the truth. So anyone before that, if you're practicing that as the true teaching, you're going to bring about ruin of your nation. If you're practicing the correct teaching, then you're going to have peace and prosperity in your lands. And this has been the case for the history of Japan and the history of other countries where the sutras were practiced correctly and incorrectly. They were drastically incorrectly. It causes destruction of the nation. Okay, so let's just go on here. When one examines the various Mahayana sutras, okay, I read that one. Okay. Okay, or it is like the 5 kinds of grain, which at times nourish human life, but at other times may injure it. So I don't know exactly what he means. Maybe if you eat too many grains, or you don't eat the right amount of grains, or you eat bad grains or something. I don't know. Little waves and a slight wind can hardly do harm to a large ship, but high waves and strong winds can easily overturn a small ship. Similarly, slight irregularities in the secular rule of the sovereign are like little waves and a slight wind, and can do little harm to a great nation or a great man. But errors in the application of the Buddhist teachings, like high waves and strong winds that overturn a small ship, can without doubt bring about the destruction of the nation. The Buddha predicted that after he had passed away in the latter age that to follow, there would be evil teachings and evil persons who would destroy the nation. But though they might attempt to destroy the Buddhist teachings as well, they could never do so. Though all the grass and trees in the major world system should be used, Though all the grass and trees in the major world system should be used as fuel in an attempt to burn down Mount Sumeru. So this is a Buddhist idea that Mount Sumeru is the center of the planet, and all the nations surround Mount Sumeru. One could never burn it down. But when the time comes for the kalpa of decline, Then a flame no bigger than a soybean will break out at the foot of Mount Sumeru and burn the entire mountain. And the same kind of thing, said the Buddha, applies to the Buddhist teachings. So in Buddhism, everything in the universe goes through formation, continuance, decline, and disintegration. So that's why it says in the kolpa, these are all called kolpas. In the kolpa of decline, it's easy to burn down a mountain with even a small fire, because that's what happens in the kolpa of decline. We're still in the kolpa of continuance right now, according to Buddhist teachings. Actually, we're in the kolpa of decline, which is the latter day of the law. They will not be destroyed by evil persons, non-Buddhist teachers, the heavenly devil, Pipias, or wielders of the 5 transcendental powers. Rather, it will be those who appear to be Buddhas or who appear to be Arhats, who possess the 6 transcendental powers. Monks who observe the precepts, wrapping their bodies in the 3 robes permitted by monastic discipline, and holding a begging bowl reverently before their eyes. High-ranking monks whose renown is like a great wind sweeping over the grass and tree. These it will be who will destroy the correct teaching of the Buddha. So in the latter day of the law, it's predicted that only these monks that are distorting the teachings, which was happening at this time in Japan, that's why he said all this stuff was happening. So they were having extreme earthquakes, they were having floods, they were having famines, they were having pestilence, which is disease, and they had internal strife, and I forget the other one. The last one is in foreign invasion. So he predicts in the Risho and Kokoron that they've had the 6 major disasters and they've had the 3 calamities. Now it's time for the 7th disaster, because everyone is practicing the wrong teachings, and all these monks that are supposed to be practicing Buddhism are destroying Buddhism with their incorrect views, and they're kind of like people in the medical field who are using their power and authority to destroy people's lives with false medicine and false science. That's what these Buddhist teachers were doing. They were the ones destroying Buddhism. Okay. When that time comes, the Buddha predicted, Brahma, Chakra, and the god of the sun and moon, and the 4 heavenly kings, angered by these events, will cause great changes in the heavens and portents on the earth to occur as a warning. And if these warnings are not heeded, they will see that the 7 disasters break out within the nation. Parents, siblings, rulers, and subjects, and the mass of common people will attack one another with great fury, and as if they were the owl that eats its own mother, or the hawk beast that kills its own father, they will bring ruin upon their own nation, and in the end it will be attacked by enemy states from abroad. So the Mongols did invade during the life of, or tried to invade. Finally, when they pardoned Nichiren from his exile at Sado, the last attack of the Mongols was defeated because there was a great tsunami. Not tsunami, it was a great, the wind god, kamikaze, hurricanes, what do they call it? Typhoon. A weird typhoon, never before seen, happened on the eastern side of Japan. Usually all the typhoons hit the western side, but this was a huge one on the eastern side where the Mongols were invading, and it wiped out all the Mongol forces that were invading. So they all retreated and decided, we're just going to move towards Europe and destroy all the nations that direction. Why go to Japan? It's too hard, because they never tried it before, and they tried it, and the wind gods killed them. According to Shinto, they believe the wind gods, Kaze, killed all these Mongol invaders. Okay. Where am I? Now I, Nichiren, use the sacred teaching of the Buddhist lifetime as a bright mirror in which to observe the situation in this country of Japan. And this mirror reveals that without a doubt, there are persons here who are enemies of the nation and enemies of the Buddha. Among the sacred teachings of the Buddha's lifetime, the Lotus Sutra is not only a bright mirror, but a divine mirror. A bronze mirror will reflect the form of a person, but it will not reflect the person's mind. The Lotus Sutra, however, reveals not only the person's form, but that person's mind as well. And it reveals not only the mind, it reflects without the least concealment the person's past actions and future as well. The seventh volume of the Lotus Sutra states, quote, after the thus come one has passed into extinction, this person will know the sutra preached by the Buddha, their cause and condition, and their proper sequence, and will preach them truthfully in accordance with principle. As the light of the sun and moon can banish all obscurity and gloom, so this person, as he advances through the world, can wipe out the darkness of living beings, end quote. So this is talking about the votary of the Lotus Sutra, which is Nichiren Daishonin. So this person will be in the latter day law, and he will see with the bright mirror that all these things are happening, and that will be the time when he will reveal the truth which is hidden in the Lotus Sutra, which is that we are all Buddhas, that we are all enlightened beings, that we are all creator beings here to create a better world for everyone, because we're all interconnected and we're all in this fucking game together. Okay. The seventh volume of the Lotus Sutra states, okay, I already read that one. The meaning of this passage is that a person who presumes to expound even one word or phrase in the Lotus Sutra must have a very clear understanding of the relative profundity of the various sacred teachings of the Buddha's lifetime and of their proper sequence. The case is comparable to a calendar for a year with its 360 days. This was the lunar calendar. It had 360 days because there's 28 times 13 months. Let me see if it's like 28, every full moon's like 28 days, and that's, moon means month in all languages. In Japan, Getsuyo, it's always a month, is always a moon. So until the Julian calendar fucked it all up, and the Romans fucked it all up, every month was a new moon, was a new month, and there's 13 months. Where's my calculator? I'm very bad at math in my head. I used to be good in my head when I used to teach Soroban, which is abacus in Japan. I used to be able to just calculate. Now, I never got to the multiplication tables on that one, but let's see. What's 13 times 28? 280 is 10 times 28. So 3 more 28s. 280. Yeah, it would be about 360. That's why they said 360. They used to have like a ceremony in most cultures because they knew there was more days in an actual year. So they had these every 4 years or so they had added these different days in with celebration days and stuff, and repentance days and times to in some cultures to forgive people's debts. If you're watching on YouTube and you can't see it and the tracking's going bad, then go to my Facebook page, no, my Instagram page. the.emperors.have.no.close. So the emperors have no close with a dot between each word. Okay, where am I? Where was the 180, 360 days? Man, I lost my place. Okay. Somewhere around here. Okay, here it is. The case is comparable to a calendar for a year with its 360 days. If there is a mistake in the numbering of even one day, then all the other days of the calendar will be thrown off. Or it is like the 31 syllables that make up a poem. If even one word or syllable is wrong or out of place, then the 31 syllables will not combine to form a poem. So they had certain rules to poems in Japan at this time where you had to do 32 syllables. I never studied that. I studied a little bit of it, but I don't really understand it. Excuse me. I'm going to go to bed early tonight. I chanted about 2 hours today in between applying for 2 or 3 jobs. I applied for a couple really good jobs, and I have an interview, my first interview tomorrow, and I feel really good about some of the jobs I applied for, so I'm not stressing out as much. I put $2,700 loan from Discover into one of my accounts, which should post in about 3 or 4 days, so that should hold me off. We'll see if I get unemployment insurance. If you guys chant and you're a Buddhist, please send me Daimoku. I'm chanting a lot. In one of the sutras, it says the 8 winds should not affect you. One of the 8 winds is censure, which is getting fired from a job is to censure. You shouldn't be elated by prosperity or grieved by decline, because it's just part of life, and you will get through it if you practice Buddhism correctly. I always have. That's why I'm confident, even though I do get fearful sometimes. And I have. Every morning I wake up about 6 o'clock. I can't go back to sleep because my heart starts pounding. I start thinking again about, oh my God, what am I going to do? How am I going to get kicked out of my place? Am I going to find a job? All these fears come up. And then I always go, does this belong to me? And I get no. And I send it back with full awareness. I send it back with full awareness because it doesn't belong to me, because 99.99% of all your thoughts, feelings, and emotions you're picking up from other people. That's why your head is on top. It's a big satellite. It picks up everyone's thoughts. So everyone's fearful of losing their job, losing their rent, losing their house, being homeless, because there's so many homeless people in the world right now. And I really want to contribute to society, and I want to have a really good job that I can contribute to society and try to help alleviate some of the problems that people are going through, because I've shown through my Buddhist practice that I can overcome everything. Okay, where am I? Okay, and in the same way, though one may read and recite only one sutra, if one is confused or mistaken regarding the sequence in which the sutras were preached, beginning with that expounded at the Buddha's place of enlightenment and ending with that preached at the very end when he lay between the sal's trees, or if one does not understand their relative profundity, then, though guilty of none of the 5 cardinal sins, one will fall into the hell of incessant suffering, and the lay believers who rely upon such a person's guidance will likewise fall into the great citadel of the Vichy hell. So people will suffer if they practice Buddhism wrong. The teacher will suffer and the student will suffer. So it's important to practice the right sutra. And according to all the sutras, the Lotus Sutra is the only sutra really to be practicing during this time in the latter day of the law, which is the beginning in the 500 years after the Buddha died, was the beginning of the latter day law, which will last 10,000 years or more. How much worse is the situation then when a wise man appears on the scene who fully understands the relative merit and profundity of the various sacred teachings of the Buddha's lifetime? At that time, certain priests, handing handing on confused and mistaken doctrines inherited from the founders of their respective schools, become national teachers or teachers to important families, and distressed at the thought that their own shortcomings may be brought to light or that they may be despised by others, they proceed to slander the above mentioned wise man to the ruler of the nation, or tempt others to speak ill of him. When this happens, the heavenly deities who guard and protect the nation will rain down destruction upon it like a fierce wind, tearing the leaves of the flimsy plantain, or great waves overturning a small boat. So this was all predicted, and this was exactly what was happening at this time. This is why all these things were happening, why the rulers were being overthrown, and why foreign invasion was happening all at this time, and why great tsunamis were happening, and great earthquakes, and great floods, and great famines and fires were all happening during this time, like never before in the history of Japan. The immeasurable meanings, which is exactly what was predicted, that this will be the time of the Votary of the Lotus Sutra, which was Nichiren Daishonin, and all of his followers, you and me, who follow him, are all votaries of the Lotus Sutra. Referring to the sutra by name and by the period in which they were preached makes clear that all the sutras expounded from the time of the Buddha's first preaching at the place of enlightenment up to the time of the Wisdom Sutra are works in which the Buddha had not yet revealed the truth. So it said in all these, I have not yet revealed the truth. The Nirvana Sutra was the last work expounded by the Buddha. It, like the Immeasurable Meaning Sutra, makes clear that of the various teachings set forth by the Buddha during the 50 years following his attainment of enlightenment, those preached in the first 40 or more years are sutras embodying erroneous views, while it refers to the Lotus Sutra as its Lord and Sovereign. In the Lotus Sutra itself, Shakyamuni Buddha makes a definitive pronouncement to the effect that the Lotus Sutra is supreme among the sutras he has preached, now preaches, or will preach. This is the only sutra. Previous sutras all said, this is the highest sutra I've ever preached. But only in the Lotus Sutra says, this is the highest sutra I've ever preached, will preach in the future as well, or now preach. This is the ultimate. The many treasures and the Buddhas of the 10 directions added the weight of their testimony to the pronouncements before returning to their original lands. In India, the 24 successors to Shakyamuni's teachings merely propagated the Hinayana or provisional Mahayana doctrines and did not expound the true principles of the Lotus Sutra. And in Japan, though there were persons such as Bodhisattva Gyoki or the Reverend Ganjin who were familiar with the principles of the Lotus Sutra, they did not work to propagate them. In China, the teacher who led the 10 schools of Buddhism of northern and southern China did not, in their minds, truly understand the relative superiority and inferiority of the various Buddhist teachings, and in preaching them, they were confused as to which were the true profundity. Similarly, Chi Tzu of the three treatise schools, Cheng Quan of the flower garland school, and Su En of the Dharma characteristic school were confused in their minds and misled in their preaching, because they were men who were firm in their aspiration for the way. In the end, they set aside their own fame and reputation and gave allegiance to the principles expounded by Tiantai. So Tiantai was the only one in China who fully understood the Lotus Sutra as the highest teaching, and they all called him the great teacher Tiantai, and they all said, okay. During their lifetime, they all said, yeah, he's the one who knows the most. We've been practicing these sutras, we don't know him as well as him. But whether the power of their repentance was sufficient to free them from the suffering of birth and death, or whether their sin of slander of the law being weighty and their power of repentance slight, they in the end fell into hell like King Ajatasattu or the scholar Vimalamitra. Vimalamitra. It is impossible to say. All the true word teachers agree in claiming that the three Tripitaka masters, San Wu Wei, Qin Kong She, and Puk Ung, were fifth and sixth in their line of succession from the thus come one Mahavrashana, and the fundamental teachers of the principle of the attainment of Buddhahood in one's present form. But I, Nichiren, make so bold as to declare that they are the founders of the line of those who steal the law, the fundamental teachers of thieving persons. When these men came from India to China, they brought with them the Mahavrashana, Diamond Crown, and Susidakra Sutra. Can't even say that word. Susidakra Dakara Sutra. Man, that's the Indian name. I think there's another name I knew in English once upon a time, or in Japanese before it was translated in English. These sutras are not only inferior to the Flower Garland, Wisdom, and Nirvana Sutra, but in comparison to the Lotus Sutra, they are 7 times inferior. One has only to look at the sutra texts themselves to see that this is clearly and patently so. So if you read all the Buddhist texts, like Nichiren did, and like Tiantai did, and like Dengyo did, you'll know exactly which one is superior and which one is inferior, because it says it in the fucking sutras. Okay. But when these men arrived in China and looked at the 30 volumes of writings of the great teacher Tiantai, his great concentration and insight, and other works, they were shocked and racked their brains, for they realized that unless they could match such excellence, they could hardly hope to propagate the sutras they had brought with them. And if they claimed that these sutras were superior in nature, this would be an obvious lie. Pondering what to do, they decided to perpetuate a great deception. They took the 31 chapters of the Mahavrashana Sutra and placed these side by side with the combination of the 38 chapters of the Lotus Sutra and the 3 chapters of the Immeasurable Meaning Sutra. The Immeasurable Meaning Sutra is part of the threefold Lotus Sutra. I think it's the first part. No, it's the third part. The Lotus Sutra is the middle part. They claim that both the Mahavrashana Sutra and the Lotus Sutra are alike in embodying one of the 3 mysteries of body, mouth, and mind, namely the mysteries of the mind. But they pointed out that the Mahavrashana Sutra also includes mudras, which express the mystery of the body, and mantras, which express the mystery of the mouth. They therefore referred to the Lotus Sutra as an abbreviated expression of the truth, and the Mahavrashana Sutra as a broadened and expanded expression of it. So they obviously were misled by the fact that they brought sutras that were inferior to what Tiantai was teaching, and they had no way of... So they just fabricated this whole thing because this sutra had mudras and mantras. It had to be better than the Lotus Sutra, which is completely false. And in reference to the Buddha's declaration that among the sutras I have preached, now preach, or will preach, the Lotus Sutra is the most difficult to believe and the most difficult to understand, they declared that the Mahavrashana Sutra does not fall into the category of sutras I have preached, of those I now preach, or of those I will preach, thus making it an equal of the Lotus Sutra and surmounting the difficulties posed by the Buddhist pronouncements on the three categories of sutras. They then pointed to the fact that the Mahavairoshana, unlike the Lotus Sutra, includes mudras and mantras, and used this as the reason for deprecating the Lotus Sutra, and on the basis of these assertions, they established the True Word School. So the True Word School was the largest school, and that's why the Nichiren was saying all the problems were happening in Japan, because everyone was practicing this inferior teaching and calling it superior. They may be likened to the three women of antiquity who became royal consorts and thus brought about the downfall of the three rulers. This is what the 9th volume of the Nirvana Sutra, a work that is concerned with the propagation of Lotus Sutra, means when it predicts that after the Buddha has passed away, evil monks will work to destroy the correct law, and that they will be comparable to women. He's not against women, because Nichiren had female priests, and he said the Lotus Sutra, and it is the only sutra where a woman, the Dragon King's daughter, gained enlightenment. So he says we're all equal, but in this he's referring to the custom of Japan at the time that women are not comparable to men, because they weren't allowed to be comparable to men. They weren't even allowed to read Chinese characters. They were only allowed to write and read in a hiragana, and later katakana. For this reason, the Tripitaka master's Sanmu Wei was the one point bound with 7 cords of iron and hauled before Yama, the Lord of Hell. On that occasion, he was barely able to return to the land of the living. When he died a second time, however, it is recorded that the skin on his body turned black and the bones all became exposed, which was an indication that he would fall into the hell of incessant suffering. For it is clearly indicated in the sacred teachings of the Buddha's lifetime that if, after a person dies, his skin turns black, this means that he will fall into hell. From this, we may also be certain that Qin Kong Shi and Puk met with similar fate. Though these men appeared to renounce their earlier teachings and admit their errors, it would seem that their repentance was not truly deep and sincere, but the true word teachers of the present time seem to know nothing of these matters. What has been said here also serves to explain why the reign of Emperor Shung of the Tang Dynasty came to such an unfortunate end. So, in the Chinese history, it shows that when the Lotus Sutra wasn't practiced correctly, or other sutras were called superior, that even the ruler of the land had an unfortunate end. In Japan, Kobo, Jikaku, and Chiso studied and transmitted this slander without either themselves realizing it or others suspecting it. For a time, the members of the Tendai Lotus School debated and argued with them over the matter, but the Tendai school gradually declined, and in the period of Myo-un, the 55th chief priest of Mount Hiei, who was active during the reign of the 81st sovereign, Emperor Ontoku, and on, Mount Hiei became wholly dedicated to the teachings of the True Word School. So this is when everything started falling apart, is when Mount Hiei was originally all the Tendai sect was practicing the Lotus Sutra, but then these other teachers came and started practicing the True Word School, and that's when the nation started falling apart. Because that's what it says in the sutras will happen. Okay. Here we are. The 61st chief priest, the acting administrator of priests, Kenshin, while having secured the name of chief priest of the Tendai school, not only shifted his allegiance to the True Word school, but later abandoned both the Lotus Sutra and the True Word doctrine and became a disciple of Honin, whose teachings are utterly slanderous of the law. The eminent administrator of priests, Jien, who led the prayers for the defeat of the Hojo forces at the time of the Jokyu disturbance, held the post of chief priest of Mount Hiei 4 times as the 62nd, 65th, and 69th, and 71st chief priest, and was the religious teacher of the retired emperor of Oki. Because these emperors chose people that were slanderous of the correct teaching, that's why they were exiled, and that's why they were beheaded, one of them, and one of them drowned. All these men, one after another, acted as vassals to receive the wisdom water of the true word teaching set forth by the Tripitaka master Sanwu Wei, Qin Kong Che, and Pukung, and by Jikaku, Chisho, and the others. Moreover, stealing the title of chief priest of the Tendai school, they took control of all the domains dedicated to the Lotus Sutra, became head of the 3,000 priests of Mount Hiei, and acted as religious teachers to the nation, following the true word teaching, which are founded on the Mahavarshana Sutra and are 7 times inferior to the Lotus Sutra. They believe them to be 8 times superior. Men such as these mistake heaven for earth, the common people for the sovereign. They not only mistake mere stones for jewels, but faced with jewels, call them stones. Persons such as these are not only the deadly enemies of Shakyamuni Buddha, the Lord of Teachings, and of many treasures Buddha and the Buddhas of the 10 directions, but they, am I almost at an hour? 52 minutes. Okay, so I have to stop soon because it's going to cut off. I don't know if I'll finish this. Yeah, I'm going to leave the rest for tomorrow. That's enough. I'm going to go to bed early. Maybe I'm going to chant a little bit more. I was falling asleep, so I decided I was going to read the sutra before I go to bed. But read the Gosho before I go to bed. Gosho is honorary writings of Nichiren. So that's all for today. Thank you, guys. I'm going to break through all this. I'm going to find a much better job. Although I made more money than I've ever made at my last job, and although I live in a better apartment than I've ever lived in my life, and I have a nicer car than I've ever had in my life, and I have a nicer motorcycle than I've ever had in my life, I know there's something much better for the world for me to be doing than to be just delivering groceries all the time, because it was just killing me. I was working 7 days a week. I enjoyed it because I can go to the drum circle every Wednesday night. I can go every Tuesday night to the adult skate world session, and every probably 2 or 3 days a week, either Thursday, Friday, or Saturday, or sometimes Sunday, or sometimes Monday, I went to karaoke. I had free time to do all these things, but I was just working every day, 7 days a week, and I didn't really, I think I took off 2 days in a row in the whole 3 years. Most of the time I took a half day off, never a full day. I think 1 or 2 times I took a full day off, and 1 time I took 2 days off. But that's just not a way to live your life. No matter how well I was doing financially and able to send a lot of money to my family in Japan, it was killing me. And my body was really knowing that I needed to change. So I know this is a benefit in disguise. I know this was a stressful period for me, but I'm going to break through it. And I'm going to give you guys all the experience at the end. Because I'm doing this reading now every night, and I'm doing this incredible amount of chanting, what I do is I chant the title of the Lotus Sutra, Nam Myoho Renge Kyo Nam, to my Gohonzon, which has the ceremony in the air on it, which is in the middle of the Lotus Sutra, which is the when they reveal the truth. I'm going to break through all this, and I'm going to have a great experience to share with all the members and the non-members alike, and hopefully many other people who are suffering in the world will realize they can stop suffering if they were to practice the correct teaching too. Because that's what it does. Everyone I've ever introduced to this Buddhism changed their life drastically while they did it. Some of them, after changing their life drastically, went and got out of it. Some of them continued. It's hard to continue because even when things are going really well, it's hard to during this pandemic, I worked 7 days a week. I didn't really chant as much as I used to chant, because I used to like chanting with members, and because we had the lockdown and everything, we couldn't. And Japanese Buddhist organizations are really conservative, and they really followed all the CDC guidelines and all these other guidelines, and they stupidly want us to get vaccinated and other things like that. I don't know, I better not say those words. Strike that in reverse. That's an opinion. I don't have opinions. I'm not supposed to have opinions because they're going to demonetize all my videos and destroy my videos if I have opinions. But if you practice a correct teaching like this, you will overcome all your difficulties, and you will. My dream is to become a world-renowned singer-songwriter and perform all over the world in an incredible band that just blows people's minds everywhere we go. But I haven't yet got to that stage. My writing is there. I just haven't had the band yet, and I haven't had the notoriety. I haven't had the success in getting my music out because I've been blocked by every single source that I put up. I was kicked off of Our Stage because I was winning all the contests, or I was getting close to winning all the contests, but they started to read my lyrics and they didn't like my lyrics, so they cut me off. And then I got kicked off of YouTube on many of my videos because of my lyrics, because they don't want you to have independent thoughts and anything outside of the box of their thinking. So anyway, I'm going to somehow break through all that. I'm going to become... That's my dream. If I can somehow just do my music, I would not have to have a day job. And I want to someday get to that point. And unfortunately, right now, I have to pay the rent, so I need a day job. So I'm going to get a really good one. And then I'm going to focus on my music and somehow break through with my music as well and start doing that. But working 7 days a week for what I was doing, delivering, I never had the energy to perform except a couple times with the Scary Gary show and a couple of independent things I did. But most of the time, I was just too fucking tired after 7 days of work to just go out and perform. And I bust a few times. But when I worked 5 days a week in other jobs, or 6 days a week, I always took that day off and I performed, and it was much more beneficial for me in the world because my music... I think I'm going to end with the song, if I have time. 57, yes I do. Okay, let's end with the song. This is the first song I wrote, if I can remember it. Let's see. I forgot how the introduction goes. Sitting on the ground, pointing your finger, searching for someone to blame, gazing around at those among you. They're not the reason why you're down. Do you understand causal relation? Why can't you see the circle of time? I can't believe I still remember this. I haven't played it for like 12 years. I forget all of it. No, I don't want to. I should have the lyrics in front of me. But that was one of the first songs I ever wrote. It didn't have any rhyme in the whole song. And I performed it at a meeting, and everyone said, "Oh, that's so great! You got to write more songs." And I've written over 100 songs now. But it took me 15 years to break through my writer's block from age 10 to age 25 till I finally wrote my first song, and I was about to kill myself. And I set a date to either quit my Buddhist practice or kill myself. And right before that, I flipped my car, and I was in the hospital, and I wrote my first song. It just somehow came out of me from that challenge, and was called "Sorry If I Opened Your Mind," and that's the beginning of it. You can go hear it on if you look it up. "Sorry If I Opened Your Mind" by Tim Janakis, Timjanakos. You can find it on a couple sites out there somewhere. All right, peace out. I'm going to be cut off right now, so I got to go. Ugh. Let's stop this one. Peace out, folks.